Oh, sorry, excuse me. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Three Coaches, One Topic. And today, as it's the second Wednesday of the month, we are doing Pull Up a Sandbag, where we focus on men's mental health. It was by accident, and I didn't realize it was going to be International Women's Day. So a shout out to all the fabulous women out there. But before we get started, what we'll do is I'm joined by Bob and Paul today. So I will pass it over to Bob to tell you a little bit about himself and his coaching journey, and then we'll move on to Paul. So over to you, Bob.
All right. Thank you, Donna. Everyone, my name is Bob Gualtieri. I live in Florida in the U.S. I do have a business along with my coaching practice. I am a trainee coach with Coaching Minds and looking forward to my certification with the EMCC, and then really working into creating a coaching with no specific category at the moment, but I have a very deep love and compassion for humanity. So I'm looking forward to using that to, better the world as best I can.
Fantastic. And when you sent me your bio, Bob, I loved it. I mean, I think I said that to you in a text message or something. As I was reading it, I was going, yes.
Yes,
It was
told me that.
on.
Yeah, I do have a very deep passion about a lot of things. I think there's especially for equality for all people, including the topic we're talking about today, and the need to be compassionate and empathetic and loving toward everybody. We're all human. We all go through the same sort of things. So, and we need more people. We need more coaches out there who are, spreading that and helping people to connect to their essence and realize that they are a perfect human being in themselves.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to you, Paul, who is regular now for Three Coaches, One Topic, which is an absolute pleasure for me.
No, thank you for having me back, Donna. I'm really grateful to be here, and so thank you so much for the in. Happy International Women's Day to all the wonderful women who are watching this as well. As Donna says, this is accidentally fell on that day, but don't worry, we're going to be feeding it into. My name is Paul Smith, based in the UK, but currently in Colombia. Yep.
We're losing you, Paul. Yeah, you're frozen and you went electronic.
Yeah, it happens, but yeah, we lost you there.
We're not doing too bad though. Dubai, Florida, and Colombia. Yeah, Paul, can't hear you at all, and you're still frozen.
We'll probably come back on any second. How these things go. Yeah.
Oh yeah, here he goes. Okay, so Paul runs Coaching Minds, which is a fantastic place for training for your certification and accreditation with the EMCC. As Bob said, I haven't met you there. I've only just joined, so it's really nice to know that we've both got that in common. And Paul and Adele, who are doing some fantastic work with the coaches, with the ethical side, and yeah, it's just, I am thoroughly enjoying my time there. Paul, you're back, or have you frozen?
Oh, can you hear me?
Oh, you're there. Yeah.
Kind of on and off a little bit.
Paul, do you want to try maybe joining again? I'll see what Paul wants to do.
Yeah.
Paul, you might need to leave and come back again. Okay, so Bob, we're going to talk about men's mental health. Now, before we came on live today, we had a quick discussion and you brought up some really, really good stuff. How would you like to discuss about men's mental health?
I think what I'd like to do is start out with a little bit of my own journey.
Yeah, please.
And my own experience with mental health struggles as a man. So I grew up here in the U.S., in upstate New York. And, it was interesting watching how men interacted with each other, interacted with women. There's very distinct differences in how they related to each other and related to women. So the roles were very, very distinctive. So it was very obvious that there were generational programming really that's taken place for a long time. My generation, certainly the ones before me and some after me, those teachings have been very strong and really rooted in that in a way that defined you as a man, what it meant to be a man, kind of where the boundaries were. That if you went outside the boundary, you really weren't a man, or you really weren't masculine. You were starting to go into the feminine side, and that was not a thing you did. that was something for a woman. So, that led to watching my own father not address his own issues with some physical health problems. He had colon cancer, and nobody knew it. He didn't mention it to anybody. He just decided, let's move from one state to another, because he always wanted to be in Florida. But I came to recognize that a big part of that was his inability to open up as a man and say, something's going on and I'm afraid. I don't know what it is, and I need help getting there. Instead, he just lived with what was happening, and he died at 47, wow. Which is just crazy to me, But it really did prove to me, especially a few years later, really starting to understand as a man growing, getting into my 20s, where your brain is now fully developed, and understanding how all of these things happen. I also had my first marriage ended up in divorce after 4 years, and that sort of shattered my whole idea of life. Because even growing up, I was taught, like most of us, and certainly here in the West, is you do A, B, C, and D. You go to school, go to college if you can, or go to a trade school, do something, find a job, find a partner, have kids, and then you live life happily ever after. And then, well, wait a minute, that doesn't always happen. And so that was shattered. So for myself, between those two very significant events, it was traumatic. I had no tools to cope with them. I didn't know how to open up to my mom about it, to my sister, or really to anybody. So I did what I was taught to do, which is just push it in, be Superman, and suck it up and deal with it. And probably 4 or 5 years after my divorce, I was driving to another state with family, and anxiety out of nowhere, and it was severe anxiety with depersonalization, which is like a detachment. And and I sought out counseling after we got back home to my home state, and discovered what this was all about. And a lot of it was just not being willing, first of all, not even understanding how to do it, because I wasn't taught how to do that. To open up and talk about what's going on, not be afraid of somebody not liking you or thinking less of you because you were becoming vulnerable, because you were talking about your feelings and you were internally in pain. And you didn't know how to deal with it. You needed help, you just didn't know how to ask for it. So I've had a lifelong journey of some, up and down cycles of anxiety. I've done a lot of research on it. I understand what happens in the brain with anxiety. Got a lot of tools now, because life does throw things at all of us now and then. But learning the coping mechanisms and learning about how our brain works, and learning how to get in touch with my feelings and not be afraid to open up to somebody, to cry, to just let it out and say, hey, I'm not doing very well here. I need to talk to somebody. And then learning to find friends who would be available and understanding and show me empathy and compassion and give me the space to allow me to do that. And that came in the form of my really close, deep friends in that support circle being women, because women were able to open up and talk.
Yeah.
Where men just wouldn't do it. It was the old, you're fine. Just suck it up and get going. Do your job. Do this, do that. Do what you're supposed to do.
But is it they wouldn't do it, or they don't know how to do it?
They don't know how either. So their only response is what they've learned, just like I did. It was, hey, be a man.
Yeah.
Man up. And we were talking about this earlier, that man up phrase is one of the worst phrases there has ever been. It's a horrible thing.
What does it mean? What does it mean? So what's your definition? So if you are going to man up, what are the pros and the cons to that?
It's one thing, I think, is manning up to realizing, okay, manning up can mean taking responsibility. And that can mean that responsibility can be the reaching out, not waiting for somebody to come to you. I think that's on the positive side. There's one positive. Not letting yourself spiral down the hole too far before you reach out. On the negative side, it's if you're not able to just do what you're supposed to do as a man, then you feel weak. Like you're not really a man, that your masculinity is now in question. And it may not be in question by other people. It may be in question by other men. It's certainly in question internally, which is a really difficult thing to deal with, because you're taught to be this. And when you're not that, all of a sudden you don't know what to do now. So it's like, now, so what does my masculinity mean?
Yeah. So Paul, absolutely. And it's really fascinating for me to understand this. As I said, I've got twin 19-year-old boys, and this is one thing that was not allowed to be said in my house. I hate that saying. We don't use man up. But Paul, what's your take on this?
Sort of fingers crossed my wife gives me permission to speak this. Apologies for that. But yeah, no, so I think, I agree with a lot of what Bob was saying. It's quite
Paul, Colombia doesn't like us today.
No.
Is it the Wi-Fi connection there? You're just gonna have to sit there and look pretty.
It's just coming in and out. You look good though.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, there you go. Pushing poses.
Oh no. Do you want to try leaving and coming back again? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, try leaving and coming back.
Perfect. That's perfect.
Okay. Sorry, Paul. Oops, let me hide that.
Yeah.
So what we were saying before, Bob, with regards to the masculinity and it being tied to your identity and personality. Now, when is that in danger?
When is your masculinity in danger? I think it feels, and part of this is sort of just a feeling. You feel like your masculinity is in danger as soon as you start to show vulnerability. And that can be in the form of maybe struggling with your job, and you have responsibility to bring in money and care for the family. Typically in the past, it's the man was the breadwinner. Thankfully, we've opened up as a society, and that's not that way anymore. But that's challenged very quickly if you're struggling at all, trying to get into a career that will provide enough for your family in a way that doesn't make them feel deprived. That's not a word I like, but they're behaving less because we feel like we want them to have more than we had as a child.
Yeah.
I think we all do that, with our children, want them to have more. We think that means more. And we were sort of taught that, even though they're happy to have whatever they have. They're happy to have our love. That's really what they want, is us to be there and see them and hear them and spend time with them. The amount of money, the amount of toys, all the other stuff, the cars, all that stuff, they could care less. But I think when we struggle to provide in a way that we feel like we should, then our masculinity is immediately tested. It's like we don't have it. And if we start to talk about it, we are now admitting that we are weak. To ourselves, we're admitting we're weak. Even though we're not, we feel that way because we were taught as a man that's not what a man is. That's not what masculinity includes.
So how can you bridge that gap from, here's Paul, if it's being said and you've been brought up with, we're just talking about bridging that gap of how can you talk to other men about your vulnerable side without feeling judged or having that questioned? If you're saying men feel like that, so what's stopping them?
Good question. Well, I think part of it is when you grow up with really strong teachings, they are so ingrained in your subconscious that it's really hard to break that programming. So that's a good question. I'm trying to think of how to really address that the right way. Paul, if you have any ideas, jump in.
If you can.
I get permission this time. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah, you're good now.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, you're clear.
Much better.
Perfect. Yeah.
Cool. No, so I think it is a really good question, Donna, because if I'm honest, and I think it's a same with Bob. I think Bob mentioned it when he was talking through. Most of the support that I've got has been with women. I've found it a lot easier to open up to females, open up to women. They're more empathetic. They appear to be more open to listen to you. They're just more warm. So I've always found it easier to open up to women than I have to men. And I think to bridge the communication gap, if we're going through something ourselves, it's very difficult to get that empathy, to get a guy to listen to you, but as a man ourselves, I think what we need to do is, how can we actually support other men? How can we be there to open them up, to help them talk to us, show them that empathy, show them that listening? And, you know, Bob, we've had conversations, I've gone through stuff, you've helped me, and vice versa, and we've been there to support each other. And I think it's because we've both been in that place that we've got that understanding, and we always open the door for each other. And still, it can be quite difficult to reach out, but it's looking at on the other side, how do we actually be there for men, rather than actually, I'm a man, where can I get that support?
Yeah, good point, Paul. And it makes me think about more men need to see that we are perfectly fine as a man being able to talk about our own vulnerability. It's not in the media as much as it should be. It's not in the the Netflix shows, and all the other forms of media don't portray enough of that vulnerability between men. And I hope I don't get slapped for this, but yeah, I'm very much in touch with my feminine side. I'm heterosexual, not gay. Gay men connect quicker with their feminine side and open up to each other. And I do have a couple of male friends who have opened up. One is gay, one is heterosexual, and they've started to open up a little bit. And I think part of that may be that I've allowed myself to this is just me. I love you. I don't care where you came from. I don't care what color you are, what religion you are. I don't care about all that stuff, labels and all those things. You're a human being like me. I love you. I care about you. If you're struggling, tell me. I will sit here with you. I won't say a word. If you just need somebody to sit here, if you want to bounce ideas off of me, let me be a sounding board, whatever. So I think us being able to show each other as men that it's okay to do that. I'm no less of a man by doing that. You know?
Yeah, and I think you make an interesting point, and this is what gets me a little bit annoyed, is the fact that to show your vulnerable side, and to get in touch with your feminine side or your masculine side, it is attached to sexuality. Your sexuality or preferences has got diddly squat to do with if you can open yourself up. So I think, social media, and we're not just talking about modern day social media. You look at the films and, going back even to the silent movie films, and how people who express their vulnerability, for women, it was either very dramatic and princess type, and for men, again, as you were saying before, it was to do with sexuality. So I think that this is wrong, and we need to keep your sexual preferences away from you being human and having the right to feel scared, feel nervous, feel vulnerable. Whether you're a head of a corporation, you're the head of the family, it doesn't matter. You are still human, and we have to embrace that. And Paul, you mentioned earlier, with regards to different factors for women, and men, the genetic side, there are differences. So would you like to explore that a little bit more, Paul?
Yeah, but before I go into that, you've just raised a good point there as well, because I think the other important thing for men as well is to understand that we aren't the roles that we play in society, and we need to understand that behind that, like you mentioned, we are human. So often in a corporation, in a workplace, if we're struggling, if we've got these feelings, sometimes we won't want to speak up because we shouldn't talk to those that we're managing because it'll show us a weak manager. We shouldn't talk to those above us because it'll show that we cannot handle our job or we're incompetent. So we feel like we can't speak. Again, we tend to close up with our family if we're playing the role of a father, or if we're playing the role of a brother or somebody who in the family, we don't want to be seen as weak neither. So we want to be the one that's holding everybody up. So and sometimes we can away from that role, understand that that's just something helping us as well. I don't know if you guys agree and you can feel that, but I think just stepping away from the role and understanding that, you know, that's not us. That's something we play, and it's okay to not be that role for a day or two, so we can heal.
Yeah.
Great point about roles. That's a big deal, because we do tend to do that. We play those roles, and then we forget that that we don't have to. We can take those moments where we can just step away from those roles and be a human. And then to your point about sexuality, Donna, it really should not be a factor.
No,
it's been portrayed that way, but it's really a humanity thing.
Yeah.
All of humanity deals with mental health issues. Yeah. I think, I don't know, I haven't researched the numbers, but we know there's a very high percentage of people that deal with mental health issues across the globe. Doesn't matter where you come from, your gender, anything else. It has nothing to do with any of those things. So that has to be taken off the table and portrayed in a human way, not in a way of our roles, like Paul was saying, or if you're more in touch with your feminine side, and automatically somebody goes, oh well, they're a little different than me. Maybe they can handle that. They go talk to the women. They're not really full men, and I hate to say it that way, but that's sort of a label that other men will put on men. I mean, we are a detriment to ourselves at times, because we will label ourselves because of our own vulnerability and willingness to be in touch with a feminine side of us, because we all have both sides.
So maybe it's the language we're using, because I think a lot of people get stuck with having to say, yeah, it gets stuck for me. I'm a lot more in touch with my masculine side, which again, I'm heterosexual, but people will see me wearing jeans and this, and I had short hair, and I would, and put me into a box. I don't have a problem if they want to do that. That's up to them. I know who I am. But so is it the language of using our masculine side and feminine side to say whether it's a compassionate side or nurturing side, or I don't know, something that is going to help us be able to express how we are feeling and where we feel comfortable?
Good points. I think, sometimes the terminology we use affects the outcome and how we feel. And it really is, it's neither of those things. It's really getting down to the basic fundamental fact that we're all human. If you take all the other things away, we're alike. And we're connected. We all experience similar things. So if we can take away some of that labeling and some of that language, that really might make a difference. Could make a difference in opening up the conversation and allowing all of us to just be human, not think about what our role is or how we've been defined. We're just human, and we go through cycles. And if something's bothering us, just talk about it, and not feel like we have to follow the definition of the label we were given, or the label we accepted, or the role, as Paul put it really well.
Yeah. What do you think, Paul?
So, going back to what you were saying earlier on, you talked about the sexualities, about the language that we use. I think, one, mental health doesn't discriminate, but I think, as we were talking beforehand, our bodies produce different hormones. We go through we have different chemicals. We go through different experiences in life. And, Bob, you mentioned the statistics. I don't have the statistic numbers, but what I do remember is that the most common age for men to commit suicide is between the ages of 40 and 55, where the most common age for women to commit suicide is between the ages of 20 and 30. And when you start to look into that, you can look at the factors and the different societal pressures that we have. You know, for women at the moment, there's a lot of pressure on how they look or how they should look. You know, Instagram models, where they see people, the way they want to portray themselves and put themselves across. And that starts at a young age, and that puts a lot of pressure on women at such a young age. Where the other end, when you start to look at the men and what happens between the ages of 40 and 55, is a lot of men are going through divorces. They're left alone. So generally the woman takes the kids, they've got the family, or they start a new family, or she's got the kids, but then the guy's the one who gets the new apartment. Generally, I'm not speaking for everybody, but it is the kind of common thing. The guy's left without the kids. And I'm sure there's instances where that doesn't happen, but that puts pressure on them, and it's a whole new life and a new process for them to go through. So I think societal pressures plays a huge role in it, and different stages of our lives.
Yeah, but don't you think also that maybe we need to step up? I mean, with this social pressures, again, what you were saying, Bob, about us being our own worst enemies. You know, we complain about how women are portrayed on social media and how we've got to, but then women are the ones that buying into that market and then, you know, feeding this to their children, their siblings, and trying to match up to it instead of saying, no, enough. You know, you can't talk about business anymore without, I need to reach other businesses, or maybe I need to get an influencer. What, out of principle, why on earth am I paying somebody who's an influencer? But anyway, and the same for men, you know, if you're buying into I say macho, it's showing my age in the 50s, into that masculine side, then how can you put a stop to it? How can you inform, educate people? How can you start helping yourselves in this area?
So for me, I honestly think the term we talked about earlier on, man up, that saying that we heard, but I think the interpretation of that and the way we see that is wrong, because we see manning up as being courageous, as being macho, as being strong. But what we actually do when we don't open up with our feelings is we're being weak. And I think a lot of men don't realize that the easy option is to bury our emotions and not talk about it. And that's weakness. The hard and difficult and strong thing to do is to talk about what you're going through, to be able to have the courage to open up to your male friends, to tell them, you know, guys, I'm really struggling right now. I don't have any support. You know, can you please help me? That takes courage. It takes strength. And for me, if you want to man up, you've got to speak up. And I really think that is where the true strength lies. If you really want to be your macho, speak up.
Yeah, Paul, you had a really big one. There was a well-known dancer here in the States that committed suicide a few months back. And I went for a walk and I came home and I was really, I was just in a bad way about it. Because the whole suicide, this young man with this incredible talent, this wonderful family, and now children are left behind, his wife is left behind, and you would never know. Nobody had a clue about what was going on. And I remember I came back and I said, I have to say something. So I went on Instagram and I said something, and it was exactly what you were just talking about, Paul. If you want to know what strength is, the man up strength, it takes tremendous strength and courage to open up like that and say, hey, I'm really struggling here. I don't know how to make it through the next day or the next hour. It's just that bad. And I just need to talk to you. And so real strength comes from that vulnerability and being able to stand up and say, hey, I'm not Superman. I'm hurting. So changing that definition, Paul, is a wonderful kind of segue into that man up thing. And the idea of being strong is being able to be that kind of a person.
You've got the kind of double-edged sword, though, because if you haven't got your fellow men to talk to, and if you show your vulnerable side to women, your partners or what have you, and their idea of that man up, you've got nowhere to turn to. So you've got pressures from both sides. So what do you do in those instances? How can women support you, but how can you, what do you do?
Oh, that's a great one. I like to just take just a piece of that, and then I'd love to have you chime in, Paul, and see what you think. I know for me, and I don't know if it's changed much over generations, but there always was this feeling that if I wasn't that strong man, that Superman guy, that my partner would not stay with me. So there was an underlying fear and discomfort of, well, if I'm not this, and if I don't portray this to my partner, I'm probably going to lose that partner, and I really love her. And there's pressure there, and you don't know what to do with that pressure. In some cases, they will. So I think women being willing to sit with a man and let them express themselves in that vulnerable way, and seeing it as a strength in a man, like you were talking about, Paul. It really is. It really, truly is. I believe with all my heart. It's a strength, because it's freaking hard, to do that. I think the same thing women have wanted from men for generations, to see them, to accept them as equals. We need the same thing from women to us, that we can be an equal in that emotional area. And that if we are that, we can go to them and say, I need you. I just need you to be there for me. I need you to hear me, and help me. I need it. And then know that you have the security of them being there, and you're not in fear of that damaging your relationship.
Yeah.
I've definitely been there, Bob. Definitely felt the similar thoughts in the past about not wanting to open up, not wanting to burden your partner, not wanting to put the pressure, because sometimes it can put pressure on the relationship as well, because you don't know how your partner's going to react, how they're going to take. Sometimes maybe you're with someone who just wants to give you advice, and sometimes when you're in that situation, advice is not the best thing you want to hear as well. But I think, Donna, you raise a really interesting question, and I think it's, in today's society, it's going a little bit further than that. And I think a lot of people actually struggle to find somebody to talk to. I know we're all so busy. I mentioned it in the last one. Everybody's too busy out loving themselves, that they're not taking time for other people, help and support other people. And I think this is why I think coaching is on the rise, on the increase. There's so many coaches out there, because coaches offer that space just to listen to that other person, just to listen, not listen to respond, and are going to give them that undivided attention. They're going to give them their full attention, their full time. So, and everybody's got their heads in their phones. It's just, I think we live in where we're going. I read something the other day. It's part of the book that we're reading, Sapiens, and he was talking about how, as a society, we are evolving rapidly, we are evolving greatly. But the more rapidly we evolve, the more greatly they evolve, the more individual suffering that we're causing as well, as part of that evolution, especially through technology and things like that. And I just think, it's not just men in general, but I think just everybody at the minute. And I'm not speaking, obviously I can't speak for everybody, but I think a lot of people struggle to find someone that's going to give them that time, who's going to be present with them and give them that time just to listen and really hear them out and support them.
Yeah, Bob and I were discussing this before, and I was before we started today, and I mentioned about, is there that element of trust as well? Because when you do finally find somebody that you open up to, if they break your trust, they throw it back into your face in an argument. You know, for me, this is a non-negotiable. I think this is just, you know, the lowest of the low. But so is it sort of, as we're all coaches, we do that contracting at the beginning of every coaching session? Is it like when you're getting into a relationship, having that conversation and say, we are going to have crappy times. I'm going to need you to step up. I'm going to need to step up. I've got your back. You've got my back. And when we're at our low points, when we're in that pit of despair, we don't bring it up and throw it back into each other's faces.
Yeah, you can't do that. There's another component here we haven't talked about yet, is access. Certainly here in the West, access to support for mental health is very expensive.
Yeah,
for the masses, very expensive, and majority of people can't afford it out of their pocket. And even if you have decent insurance, they may cover, I don't know, a few visits. Most insurance policies don't cover any of it. So, you know, where do you go? And if you don't have a friend group or support group, where do you go? I think that, you know, to your point, Paul, the rise of coaching is a magnificent bridge to me, because you have this high level support that you can get, but who can afford that? And you need the support over a period of time. You can't just have a one session thing and go, damn, I feel good now. You know, it just doesn't work that way. But in a coaching space where you really are holding space for people, because we learn what it means and we understand what it means to be open and compassionate and empathetic and give that person that space. And a lot of times that in itself is the first icebreaker to them being able to open up and just start to talk. So we play a big role of that to bridge that gap between getting nothing and something that's just too affordable. So, you know, the widespread growth in coaching, which is one of the things I love about, you know, what you've created, Paul, the content of what's in the program and getting accreditation. We're dealing with people's lives, you know, mental and physical well-being. So being really qualified and caring and being empathetic again and compassionate with those people is critical. But we can be part of that change and support group.
Yeah, Paul, you need to talk about Coaching Hub, because of Coaching Minds, this is one way people can reach out and get so much support.
Yeah, no, it is. And I'll talk about that in a second, because I just want to flip the other side of the coin there, Bob, as well. Because whilst coaching's great, and pardon my language, Donna, but some coaches can take the piss on how much they actually charge as well. So, you know, if you're going out there, maybe you're watching this and you've gone to coaches and they've been far too expensive, you can't afford it, then, you know, there are coaches out there that are a lot more reasonable, that are there, that are driven to support you and to help you, rather than make these six-figure, seven-figure myths that are out there just so they can rob you and kind of prey off your vulnerability as well. So you do have to be cautious when you're looking for coaches in the industry. And the other point, Donna, just going back to what you shared as well, I thought was really important, you know, that contract before you get into a relationship. I think for me, one thing I've learned is always good to be honest at the beginning of your relationship about what you're going through at that time, or what you've been through, so that person knows more about you. And if you know, let's say the other person doesn't take it, then they're not for you. But if you find the right person, that person will listen to you, and you can be there to support each other from the beginning. I read something a couple of weeks ago about everybody has their own baggage at the minute, and it's finding somebody that's willing to help you unpack that. So I think when you want that support, when you're getting into a relationship, it's really important for us to be honest and just explain what we're going through. And if that person doesn't understand, doesn't want to listen, then you know that they're not right for you. And you know that if things do get worse in the relationship down the time, they're not going to be the ones that are going to be able to support you.
But it's also important to remember that you're going to pick up another bag along the way on the conveyor belt of life, and you're going to have to unpack that. It could be a bigger bag, it could be a smaller bag, and you are in any relationship, you are going to have new challenges, whether it's a mortgage, moving countries, babies, what have you. But as you progress, your hormones, your body changes, your eating, your self-care changes. So this isn't a one contract at the beginning that's going to set you up for life. It is, keep on having those conversations. But maybe do you think it's something that should be brought into schools about how to communicate with the same sex, how to communicate with opposite sex? I don't know. What do you think?
Wow, that's a really good point. Paul, I do want to mention I'm so glad you talked about the importance of looking for coaches, because we all see that there's a pretty large audience out there that have latched on to coaching as a way of making big money. And so people need to really be careful about who they're looking for in a coach. And there is affordable coaching out there. So I'm glad you brought up that point. It's really, really important. As far as school goes, I think, it's not taught in school. I know here in the West, the curriculum really is set up for you to get into a workforce that really in the end is feeding a corporate owner. I mean, you're not really valued for the person that you are. You're kind of taught how to be a good employee.
But that can change. It's all about relationships. Whatever job, work, field you go into, it's all about relationships.
It is. And I think school is missing out on teaching people about relationships and how to communicate effectively with other people, regardless of gender or anything else. Just open and honest communication, and how to those general skills, life skills, basically, that I know they're not teaching very well here in our schools.
But isn't that when they're the most, I mean, I don't know, you guys tell me, it's your late teenage years, your most vulnerable, confusing, messed up, who am I, what do I want, I don't know. What is it like for men?
No, I don't know. And I think school's not just missing out on communication, relationships, but I think it's missing out on a whole education piece. We found our personal growth journey quite late on in life. Well, I would say I was quite late on in life. But all the stuff that we talk about in personal growth, we don't just do communication. We find out our behavior patterns. Find out who we are basically. Why can't schools bring that kind of personal development and that growth in at teenage levels into high schools, so people can start to find themselves a little bit early and start to understand what is important in life. What is the difference? Something simple as what is the difference between an introvert and an extrovert? Because start to find schools, it's generally the extroverts that bully introverts. It's clear. We know that. We've learned that that's. But if actually the school educate them that these are introverts, it's okay to be an introvert, it's fine to be an introvert, it's fine to be an extrovert, and you give everybody that awareness and that self-discovery, you could tackle bullying as well, by helping people discover who they are, rather than just give them stuff like algebra and geography and things that probably we don't take away. That I'm sure we can all think of a lot of things from high school that we learned that we haven't applied in our later life.
Let me think about that one.
Yeah, we all know that's really true. I think the other thing it brings home for me is in the formative years as a child, and I've heard the numbers vary. It could be up to 7 years old. Those formative years when your brain is initially developing are critical. We can teach a lot by teaching our children how to feel safe, how to feel loved, what it feels like to be embraced and cared for, not just give them food and water, just to survive physically, but showing them through our actions what safety feels like, what it feels like to be nurtured and loved. Because those formative years, if you aren't developed well in those formative years, then you're going to deal with it up and through high school and beyond, until you realize that somewhere back there was some sort of something I didn't get, something traumatic might have happened I didn't deal with. I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel like I was enough because I wasn't attended to. I was given food to survive, and I was given drink and all that stuff, but I wasn't really attended to. So there's, I think, a combination of being really aware as a parent in those formative years with our children, and then carrying some of the educational components of that into the school place, where we can learn those things like Paul was saying.
But okay, so when they're up to 7, that basis is heavily put upon the parents. But in the teenage years, it's more of the peer group. So if they're more impressionable and susceptible at that age, they come to that fork in the road where they're making bad choices, good choices, peer groups. Again, it's about that manning up. No, this is what men are, so having that education and that support at that age is crucial.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I don't see why schools can't.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Sorry, Bob.
No,
You go.
Oh, no, I was just gonna agree. So go ahead.
And I agree, Donna. And I maybe it's not just education either. It's why can't schools put on certain support groups? And I remember when I was at school, let's say I had a problem, who do you go to? The only person you could go to is a teacher. And if you go to the teacher, you're seen as people see it, you're seen as a weak or a teacher's, even if you're not a teacher's pet, it's got nothing to do with that. You just want to explain that you got something going on at home, or you've got a problem or stuff, I had quite a difficult childhood, especially I had to go through 2 different high schools and things like that. It wasn't easy for me through the teens. And, why can't schools put on groups, have somewhere that people can go to that isn't direct to the teacher? Maybe is peer support groups, teach them, educate them on how to have peer support groups. We're going to have a session after school that's going to be to support. You can share whatever's going on. We're here to help you, something like that. Obviously, I haven't defined it really well there, but there could be something, I think, in schools in terms of helping people get that better support and that the education they need.
Yeah, and I agree, but I don't think it should all be put onto schools. I think parents need to, again, take this ownership, and all schools have parent liaison with the school principals and so forth. So it's about coming as a collective and parents saying, right, how can we support our children during this difficult time? The school can provide certain training, venue, all those things. So it's collaborative. And I think people, I know schools have got a lot better and are more aware of the mindfulness. But as we discussed before, is it just ticking the box? But with regards to men's mental health, especially for boys who are at that age, will take it out on others. Isn't it us as adults, I can't get my words out. It's the menopause. Isn't it our duty and right to set these up to help them to succeed and to help the young men to start communicating and having positive role models, basically.
I agree with you, Donna, but then I think, and don't shoot me, no one shoot me for saying this, but I think a big gap is a lot of parents need educating.
Oh, 100% agreed. Yes, we're all shocked.
You see, and it's getting worse. I honestly think parents, and I'm not speaking for everybody, but just what I observe, the way they are with their children these days, they just give them an iPad. Let's give them an iPad, sit down. You see this all the time where they're just giving the kids the technology. They're sat on their phone. Not all parents are like that, but it's becoming high. It's on the rise. And for me, that's really, really bad parenting. Just to give your children something to distract themselves, get themselves into, they're going to go off. I was having this conversation with somebody the other day, kind of people who don't understand technology, they don't understand what their children's got access to. If you're not careful, you're not educating them on what they're using, there's a gap there as well in what they're actually accessing in technology. So I really think parents could be doing more as well.
Well, at the end of the day, it's all about communication. And again, before you came on, Paul, Bob and I really had a good conversation. It is about taking that ownership, stepping up, and being accountable for your actions, and just being compassionate. Look, we're near the end. We've gone on for, what was it? 53 minutes, 7 minutes. So before we close, do you have any parting words of advice, tools to men that are finding it really difficult to reach out to other men, to their partners, to their mothers, their girlfriends, whoever?
So I think for me from my own experience, I think one thing that's really, really important, it's just going to be one thing I'm going to share, is don't give up on finding that help. Maybe you do find the courage to ask once or twice, and the help and support you get isn't help and support. I've seen a counsellor when I struggled before that was terrible. I came out feeling worse than before I went in. And at that point, I felt like giving up. I felt like giving up searching. So don't give up. There are people out there that care about you. There's people out there that want to support you. So just keep finding and keep going out there, and you will get the right support eventually that you need.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great point, Paul, because it's about other things. If you don't connect with the person that you seek support from, if it's not there, it's not going to work. And I felt that same thing. I've come out of it thinking, I didn't get anything. I don't feel any better. And then you find someone that you relate to that really starts to help you. So that's the kind of the ownership part, Donna, is get in there. If I wanted to use man up word for something, I would say seek it out. Just okay, that's just one person, they didn't work out. There are a lot of people out there. And the other, I think, is to be willing to portray yourself as being a loving, caring, compassionate, empathetic man. That's part of being a man as much as anything else is. So lending a hand to somebody, holding space for them and just listening and being there, being a good friend, and just mentioning to somebody, hey, if you need to talk, just let me know. You can do it in a casual way where it doesn't feel like it's imposing on their boundary or anything. But we can be an example, all of us.
Exactly. And we all have different strengths at different times, and we're not always on our best performance or running on all cylinders, and we need that compassion, whether you're male or female, and just be there for the other person. It's a partnership, it's teamwork, and have each other's back, and just, if you need help, say. And if that person throws it back into you, they've given you a gift, don't go back to them. Find somebody else that will. There's a gift there. You just need to look for it. Just quickly, Paul, please say about Coaching Minds, if people are looking out for pro bono or coaching, how can they contact you?
Yep, so as part of our Coaching Minds certification accreditation program, our coaches get access to, as part of their development, they need to have 40 hours of coaching. So to help them to create a win-win situation, if you're looking for coaching, you want free coaching, you want access to our trainee coaches, then you can join us in our hub.coachingminds.co.uk. And you can find us in there, drop anybody a message, you can browse the coaching rooms, you can connect with our coaches, or you can find me and drop me a message in there too, and I'll direct you to the right place to get the support that you need.
Fantastic. Thank you. And I will put that in the replay, and I will add these links to here as well. But exactly. So there's, you know, you don't need to pay out loads and loads and loads of money, and there is, you know, availability there. You know, it's being ethically run, and the coaches do follow competencies and so forth, so which I'm very big on. But yeah, so perfect. Thank you very much, Paul. Bob, pleasure to meet you. And before we end this, well, after we've ended this, well, I'll still catch up with you for a quick chat. But thank you, Paul and Bob, so much for joining me today. Anybody who has any questions, wants to reach out, please leave a message in the comment section and we will get back to you. Thank you very much, and everybody have a great evening. Good night.
Thank you.